Ken, you look bundled up.
It's cold back here in this room.
Hey, I get it. My office space is out in our garage, so I've got a space heater out here.
I got me a little heat bud, but it doesn't really do much. It takes like maybe 6 hours to warm the room up.
I get that. I'm actually gonna in the process. I found this overhead curtain style like you'd see in a medical, but it's a thick curtain material that I'll be putting up here, and it's better for sound absorption than an actual wall is. So let's see. Christina, good morning.
Sorry, good morning.
No worries. Let's see. We've got
Good morning.
four more or three more people coming in.
Good morning, everybody.
Nelson, good morning. This was so when we had the classes over at Gerber, this was the mad dash into the classroom that we would see it right at the time we were about to start. Okay, we'll just give a couple more minutes and then we'll get started. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Glad to have everybody back in class. Tasha's trying to get back in here. And we will get started with our lesson on chemistry. So we now get into building blocks of our class as we start with the understanding of the chemicals that we will be utilizing in our industry. And over the course of the next 2 weeks, we will be discussing chemicals. We're going to, as you probably looked ahead in the chapter, hopefully read over the material in lesson 2 of your book. You'll notice it is a pretty in-depth chapter. A lot of details, especially when we start to get to understand how chemicals work, dealing with the different types of chemicals, talking about pH as well as chemical dilutions. So it's an in-depth class, and there's a lot of time that you're going to need to do some reading. And Naomi's got her hand up. So Naomi, how can I help you? You there, Naomi? Okay, so keep going here. So let me share with you, because now as we start this lesson, we'll start utilizing a thing that's a slide share, and it's an outline from ISSA and how we cover this class. It helps us to go through our book. So you'll notice you should be seeing what looks like a PowerPoint. Everybody see that? Okay. So our objectives in this lesson is chemical safety. okay, and safe practices in dealing with chemicals. That's going to be a lot of our discussion today. The different types of soil. There's two basic types of soil. So we'll discuss that. On our class on Friday, we'll talk about the 7 different basic types of cleaning agents and the process involved in soil removal, the physical characteristics of cleaning agents. And as we go through next week, we'll get into dealing with acidity or alkalinity, how we determine the different strength of a cleaning agent, how dilution ratios work. So next Wednesday, be prepared for some math. That's the fun stuff, the math part of this. Yeah, Ken, I love that look. Oh no. So we'll get into dilution ratios and how we mix chemicals and utilizing them. We will talk about the non-chemical factors that affect the chemical or cleaning chemistry, as well as talk about the different methods that are available now in using non-chemical cleaning agents, things that are not alkaline or acidic, basically utilizing water. We'll talk next week on disinfectants, how germs grow and reproduce, the different types of disinfectants. You know, we all see different chemical disinfectants in the stores, but did you know that there was 7 basic types of disinfectants? If you read ahead in your book, you'll notice that there's a lot of detail on those. So that's going to be our objectives. Like I said, it's a lot of material to cover over the next 2 weeks. So we'll slow down so that we can make sure we get it covered very well. And as we go through that, let's just talk a little bit about the most widely used chemicals for the general cleaning. I asked you guys to do a little bit of homework, to look at your cleaning chemicals at home. So who wants to share with me some of the cleaning products that you guys are using in your own homes?
Pine Sol, Ajax,
Okay, Pine Sol and Ajax.
Clorox wipes.
Clorox wipes, yep. Everybody using disinfectant wipes at home right now since COVID. It's hard to find. My wife, every time going to the store, she's looking for disinfectant wipes for a year now. All right, what other chemicals?
Bleach.
Bleach, okay.
Concentrate bleach tablets.
Say that again, Alex.
Concentrated bleach tablets.
Okay, excellent.
No. Windex.
Windex, yep. Everybody uses Windex of some sort.
Let's see. Methyl. Is it methyl? METHOD. Yeah, methyl.
Methyl chloride,
No, all-purpose cleaning.
all-purpose cleaner, okay? Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Ken,
But
you're
with-
muted.
But with that one,
Yeah,
as I was reading the ingredients, they don't have the chemical what they're using.
we're going to talk about why that is the case. There is a specific reason when we talk about labeling, so we will address that. All right, Ken, were you trying to tell us what you're using?
Yeah, I have the same method thingy. And then Gugon.
Gugon, yeah. What do you use Gugon for?
I used to work on my car a lot, and working with the doors and such, getting all that tar off and all that good stuff, or gum that I,
Yep.
accidentally falls out of my mouth or something. You know what I mean?
As long as it doesn't fall in there. As long as it doesn't. All right.
I use Dawn Heavy Degreaser. It's literally this.
Yep. Yep. Dawn has been around, and it's an interesting product because Dawn dish soap is a fantastic degreaser, and if you work in the oil industry, You know that Dawn dish soap is used when you have oil spills, and they will use that to help clean up. They've even used it because it's safe enough to use on animals to wash the oil off of ducks and so forth that get unfortunately contaminated by oils. So, okay, very good. Any other products that you guys have around the house?
How about Shout?
Shout? Yep, absolutely. Yep. Anybody using Simple Green? Yep, Mark, okay.
Yes.
Yep. A degreaser for around the house, especially in the garage.
Well, actually, in the back patio, because I don't get too much sun, I get that algae. So I use the brand with the algae.
Okay,
And
fantastic.
it actually works pretty good.
I usually tend to grab something that's like multi-surface or kind of like a blend. I'm looking at this Spick and Span that I've been using, multi-surface cleaner.
Yep.
Cuts, grease, and deodorizes, but it says, it doesn't contain any phosphate, chlorine, bleach, or ammonia, but it doesn't give me an ingredients list. But I've been using stuff that's multi-surface.
Right. Anybody using Fabuloso?
Yeah, I got that, and I got the Mean Green,
Okay.
and the Lysol. You know what I'm saying?
Lysol, yep, another brand. And I heard, I think Nelson was touching on Method, which you'll find at Target. Okay. 7th Generation is another popular brand at Target. So, what we're talking about here, and the reason I asked this question is what we all named was brands of product. In fact, nowadays, those brands, if we mention things like Dawn, Simple Green, Clorox, they have multiple different products. It's not just Simple Green. They have Simple Green for doing this or Simple Green for that. Dawn used to be just dish soap. Now Christina's got it as a multi-purpose cleaner degreaser. Spick and Span's another one. Lysol, Clorox, they've all done it. Clorox has gone to the extent of they have a broad range of disinfectants because that's their strength is in the disinfectants. So they have a lot of different products in those realms. But when we talk about brands, we're not talking about the chemical, we're talking about the label. Because as you mentioned, the ingredients is really what's the chemical, right? That's the thing with everything else. If we think about vitamins or brands of hair soap or whatever, it's a brand, and you have to look at the ingredients to determine what the actual chemical is that makes it up. And chemists will spend a lot of time formulating to give you a fragrance that is popular. So that's why I mentioned Fabuloso, because lavender is a real popular fragrance. It's interesting, when I was traveling for my job and working with school districts down in Southern California, the 2 biggest products that I found in the cleaning business that people like to use from their home was bleach and Fabuloso. Why? Because they're inexpensive and bleach kills everything and Fabuloso smells nice. But it was just an all-purpose cleaner. So when we break it down and we talk about the different types of chemicals, that's what we start to get a little bit more specific. In our professional world, in the commercial cleaning industry, we look at the fact that there are bowl cleaners, okay, carpet spotters, disinfectants, floor finish restorers or spray buffs. There's also floor finishes, general purpose cleaners, glass cleaners, hand soaps, and then polishes, which could be a variety of wood or metal polishes. Those are just some of the different chemicals that we would use in our industry. So understanding that, we're going to learn what makes those chemicals what they are. And in the lesson that we get into on Friday, we'll talk about the cleaning agents. And in our world, there's basically 7 different cleaning agents that we're going to break down. So, but one of the most important things is when you're working with chemicals, is being safe with chemicals. And the first thing we discuss when we start talking about chemicals is safety. And that's obvious for the reasons of if we aren't safe with chemicals, we can harm ourselves, right? We can harm somebody else. We can damage a surface. Anybody ever used the wrong chemical on a surface and damaged it? I have. Okay. For example, I'll date back to when I first got into this business. I was about 22 years old when I first worked for a supply company. And there is a local Catholic church here in town that had a very old tile floor. The gentleman over there was stripping the floor, and I had learned about floor stripping through my training and through my experience doing janitorial work. So I was excited to be able to go help this guy out because he needed to know what do I deal or use to be able to get the some of the heavy buildup that was occurring along the edges and on the baseboards. How do I get that wax off? So I recommended a aerosol baseboard stripper. And the next day I get a call from the school and they says, can you come out here? You recommended a product that you gave to our employee and he has damaged the floor. It was the wrong kind of stripper for the floor. And as a result, he damaged the floor. It bleached it out because it was the wrong chemical. If we use the wrong product, we can cause damage. So it's important to understand not only how a product works and what it's made of, but understanding there are certain types of chemicals to do certain types of cleaning. And as we go through this process, we'll really start to understand the use of acids and alkalines and solvents. So to prevent serious injury, the basic rules, okay? We start with the idea of training, okay? Training is something that we want to know everything we can about a product. Your employer is responsible to help you with training, but basically it's your responsibility to understand and abide by the safety guidelines. Anybody heard of OSHA? Who could tell me what OSHA stands for? Anybody?
I read it in here.
Isn't that Occupational Safe and Health Administration?
Pretty close. Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Yep. It's a federal agency, and almost all states in the 50 states have their own individual department that is their own state OSHA. So there is OSHA, and then there's Cal OSHA. OSHA is who sets the guidelines for workplace safety. And part of those guidelines have to do with something called safety data sheets, or SDS. And those SDS is really what helps us to do something. Hang on real quick. And as a result, we're going to go in and understand more about how an SDS works. So your training will involve understanding the SDS, reading the labels and any other related documents associated with that chemical, understanding the safety of it. Is the product flammable? Does it have any reactivity? What kind of personal protective equipment should you wear when working with that chemical? And then how should I mix the chemical? Now, it's an important thing to note. When it comes to mixing chemicals, an important rule of thumb, never mix two different chemicals together. Okay, we are not chemists. So unless the manufacturer tells you to mix part A with part B, okay, that is their instruction. And therefore it's not going to be too different. It's products that are made by the same manufacturer and made to go together. Otherwise, we don't mix chemicals. One of the, widely known but biggest dangers out there is mixing an ammonia product with a bleach product, because it will create a gas that can kill you. A few years ago, there was an incident at a Buffalo Wild Wings back east, where a toxic gas was created by somebody in the restaurant who had mixed these two products, bleach and ammonia. The person who mixed it died, but the entire restaurant had to be evacuated. The fire department was called. They had to bring in blowers to blow out the air so it was safe, and people had to go to the hospital. It created a very dangerous environment. It's not common that you would have an explosion, but it's more common that you would have a gas created by mixing two different chemicals. So the first thing as a teacher that I want to make sure I get across is never mix chemicals. Now, adding water or diluting a chemical is not the same as mixing chemicals. So we will talk about how to dilute a chemical and how to follow the manufacturer's instructions on that. So chemical safety is the most important. Make sure that when you're doing your training, when you go to work for a manufacturer, or for a company, you pay close attention during the training session by your employer to make sure that you understand the different products to use and how to use them. Make sure you read the labels. Here's another interesting thing about labels. Products in a workplace setting are required by OSHA to have a label. It is not appropriate to have a product, a bottle, that has no label and you have to guess what it is, or for somebody to write glass cleaner on it. That's not acceptable. OSHA will fine a company for that, for not having proper labeling and not having a safety data sheet. Regarding the personal protective equipment, almost all chemicals require that you wear gloves when working with them, and it's a safe practice. So from this point on, we want to understand that gloves is a standard personal protective equipment we would use in our business. Beyond just chemical safety, what other reason would we wear gloves?
For
The
protect
chemicals don't
skin.
seep in. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Okay.
Go ahead, Arcana.
Go ahead, sorry.
Archina, go ahead.
Okay. Protect by skin by gloves with chemicals.
Absolutely. Our skin can absorb things. And right now, in the environment we are in, we are now all hyper aware that we could easily get sick from transmittable diseases, right? Obviously, COVID's the big one. But when we talk later in this chapter about bloodborne pathogens, okay, that is diseases that are transmitted through blood or bodily fluids, those can be transmitted to our skin if we have an open cut. So, right, as a matter of fact, I just today got a pretty nasty paper cut. That's an open cut. That's just something that I can get blood transmitted through. Our skin is really porous, and we have to be aware. It's a very great safety protection, but we need to protect ourselves, and gloves do that for us. So it's protecting ourselves not just from chemicals, but it's also from diseases and bacteria that can be spread through touch.
Hey, David.
Yes, sir.
I started thinking about all of this stuff that's going on with COVID and wiping different surfaces and going into different rooms and using cloths and trying to avoid cross-contamination.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that's in the back of my head already, where I'm like, okay, I'm using this rag on X, Y, and Z. At what point do I need to switch that stuff out?
Good question. And I will say we'll cover it a little bit more detail in our chapter about above floors.
Okay.
But let me address that since you bring it up. The good thing to know, especially when we're dealing with COVID, is that even though this virus and other viruses can exist outside of the body for a period of time, usually up to about 48 hours to, I think in some cases, 72 hours. The reality is, with a standard cleaning agent, okay, we can get most of that. And so it will be wiped up, clean, and destroyed. And when we start to talk about how the germs are made, the cells of a germ or of a virus or bacteria, we'll explain more about how we kill that utilizing the chemical. But there are some important rules about cross-contamination and some real simple ones. You know, when we're cleaning, if we're cleaning in a healthcare environment, we don't take the same rag from one patient room to the next. Okay. If we're mopping the floors, a little bit different circumstance, but generally speaking, a microfiber, which we'll talk a lot about in the next lesson, you use a fresh microfiber every room. If we are dealing with our homes or even in a commercial cleaning setting, cleaning restrooms, some basic practices that we'll learn where you don't take a rag from the toilet or the urinal or any of those up to clean a touch point surface. We always start with the touch points and then work our way down to those surfaces so that we don't cross-contaminate. So good observation, Tony. So just reviewing real quick, we mentioned an SDS. An SDS stands for what again?
Safety data sheet.
Safety data sheet, right. That's an important piece of information that will come up in every job you ever do in the cleaning industry. You're going to learn about safety data sheets. If your company does not tell you about the safety data sheets, ask about them. I'm not going to talk about Flashpoint right now because we haven't covered it, but there are 4 types of PPE that we particularly deal with. It's gloves, safety goggles, or face shields. Now, this is not safety goggles. These are just glasses. What's the difference between glasses and safety goggles?
The safety goggles will cover your entire eye,
Yes.
making sure no moisture or splatters get up on in your eye.
Anytime you're working with chemicals that have a potential for splash, it's a good safe practice to wear safety goggles. So things like if I'm mixing a chemical with water, there's a potential for splash. If I am working with maybe a bowl cleaner and cleaning toilets where I'm spraying it and atomizing it, there's a potential for splash. If I'm working with certain cleaners where I'm doing very aggressive, like stripping a floor, I'm mixing floor strippers, potential for splash. Anytime that you have that potential that something could splash in your eye, good safe practice, wear safety glasses. Okay. Aprons, we don't typically wear aprons too much in our cleaning business, but if you're working in a food industry, okay, in the sanitation department, a lot of times they take chemicals and will hose down stuff and they will spray it down in large volume. It's a very wet environment in a food manufacturing industry. In that case, rubber boots and a rubber apron so that we protect our clothing from getting all that because we're working with lots of water. Respirators. Okay, a respirator is beyond just a face mask. This is now something that is going to trap particulate. And when we work with some pretty harsh chemicals, respirators are a great tool. We won't deal with that in our industry. Is really gone away from those harsh chemicals. because they understand they're just not safe and it's not worth the risk. So there's not too often we'll run into that. Dealt with that. I explained this very important fact. Custodians are not chemists. So don't try and create it. And, you know, it's hilarious that I have to bring this up in a class. One of my close friends, I have known him for 30 years. We've been in the cleaning industry together for probably 20, 25 of that. A couple of years ago, we were working together on quite a few jobs. We were doing a lot of floor work together, stripping and waxing floors. And I worked for chemical manufacturers for years, provided him a lot of different floor finishes and floor strippers. And I watched him do something that absolutely shocked me. At the end of the job, he took the leftover floor finish that he was working with and poured it into a bucket that had no label. And I asked him, I says, well, what is that? Are you going to dispose of it? What are you doing? He goes, no, this is my leftover floor finish. I just take whatever I have left over and then I end up saving it for another job. He says, yeah, but you buy a bunch of different floor finishes. Are you telling me you just throw them all in there, mix them? He goes, yeah, it's all the same. It's not all the same. Different manufacturers, different chemistry. Now, how do you know that those finishes are going to perform well together when you mix them? You're not a chemist. I had another gentleman last year. We were on a job site, and this came up yesterday in a training I was doing. He explained that he says, okay, well, what I want you, and he was telling the other people, he was a lead on a job site. So he's explaining to some of the newer janitors, pour this much chemical into there. Okay, that's right. And mix it with the water. And then about once a week, add about a capful of this other chemical. Well, hold on, what? He was mixing chemicals because he says, well, I get better performance out of it when I do that. He had no idea what he was doing. He just figured, I know this works really well for this, and this works really well for that. So if I combine them, I'm going to get the best of both worlds. No idea really what he was doing, but he thought it worked. He felt like it worked, but in the end, he was creating a safety hazard. So never, never. And if you are in a job site and you're one of the new hires and you have a lead or supervisor tell you to mix two different products, tell them to show you the safety data sheet or the label instructions. And if they say, well, just take my word for it, take their word for it. Say, look, I'm sorry, I'm not going to put myself at risk doing that. I'll follow the manufacturer's instructions. And if you're still running into problems, call your boss, the manager, or somebody, and get them involved. So just some safety points there.
Hey, David, real quick.
Yep.
When you talked about OSHA and those fines, I mean, they're crazy high fines. I looked at their website. I saw some section I was seeing. They post fines that they've issued.
And they just raised the fines January of this year.
Wow.
Yes.
So when someone in that scenario stripped that floor out, it bleached that floor, we're talking who knows how much damage to that floor. How would you mitigate that? Was there a way in that scenario you could reverse that damage?
Not in that particular case.
All right.
What saved my tail on that one is this was a floor that should have been replaced about 30 years before.
Okay.
It was made out of asphalt tile. Asphalt tiles are no longer made. And the manager there says, you know, we need to replace this, and it just made it more clear that they had a lot of broken tiles and a lot of damage to their floor anyway. But I felt bad because it was an old church. A lot of times churches don't have a lot of money. So, you know, I didn't make it any better. It was a learning lesson for me. I was very fortunate that occurred 25 years ago, because nowadays they would have had an insurance claim, and our insurance would have had to pay for replacing a floor. And ultimately, because I'm the one who recommended the product and I sold him the product, I was responsible for selling him the wrong product. So our insurance would have had to cover that. I just read an article from the industry about that, how, we're living in a day and age that as we make recommendations, we have to be held accountable for recommending the right products. All right, let's talk a little bit more about the protections. It mentions arm and hand protection. Obviously, gloves are important, but within the idea of gloves, there are different types of gloves. Okay, so to give you an example, anybody ever used the gloves, the vinyl gloves that you would use in food handling? Anybody ever had to work in like a kitchen environment? They're kind of slip-on gloves. They're not form-fitting. They're cheapy, kind of disposable gloves.
Plastic.
Yep. Those are not for the cleaning industry. So throw those out. Most of what we use is latex gloves. And latex gloves provide a good protection. The other one, though, that is very popular in our cleaning industry, Nelson, you're muted. You're muted again.
I was saying vinyl gloves.
Vinyl gloves. Now, vinyl gloves are good. Those are vinyl. Yep. Robert, thank you. Vinyl gloves are really good if you have an allergy to latex. Those are fantastic. My favorite, though, are what are called nitrile gloves. Okay? And nitrile gloves come in different thicknesses. My sister is a EMT. She's going through medic school right now to become a paramedic. If you are a first responder, you wear nitrile gloves. If you are a police officer, you wear thicker nitrile gloves. Okay? Because your concern is about punctures a lot of times. Latex gloves have a tendency to tear easily, whereas nitrile gloves do not tear as easily. So they're really good in the cleaning industry. All right.
Those the blue gloves, right?
Yep. Blue or purple.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic gloves. Now, what about if you were working with a chemical where you have to do some deep scrubbing? That's where we might wear a long glove that is elbow length. Perfect example is if we had to scrub or clean tanks or something where we have to reach into an area to scrub it, okay? Then those are really good gloves for that kind of environment. What I have recommended for the last number of years is wearing a rubber, like a nitrile or latex glove underneath that, and then that one as well, because it gives you the arm protection. The reason why we would wear arm protection is if we are working with something that we have to reach into to clean. Okay. There are other types it mentions about those are made of leather, wire mesh, canvas, a wide variety of gloves. But understand that most cloth type gloves do not provide protection against chemicals. They protect our hands, and if we're working in an environment where we're maybe working with wood materials or something along those lines, or something that we could damage our hands, it's good to wear those type of gloves. But in the relation to the chemical cleaning industry, latex, vinyl, or nitrile are the types of gloves we would wear. Here's an interesting fact about eye protection. I thought this was a fantastic fact. 60% of eye injuries happen when workers are not wearing eye protection because it was not normally used or required on the job. And that's become a huge issue because we assume that something won't happen. That doesn't happen. It shouldn't splash my face, but it does. It happens. So if you're working with chemicals, to me, anytime I'm mixing a chemical, anytime I'm working with a chemical that I'm spraying in an environment, I think it's a good safe practice to wear eye protection. About the only time I don't wear eye protection with chemicals is if I'm mopping a floor. But if I'm mixing it and I have to pour 1 gallon and mix it with the mop bucket, I'll wear my eye protection in. So just a good safe practice.
Another thing with eye protection, like when I do deep cleaning for the classroom,
Yep.
clean the light and the particles will, fall to dust, get in your eye. So
Absolutely.
yeah, sometimes I wear eye protection or shades. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. More and more, we just need to think about protecting ourselves and our bodies. And nowadays, obviously, I see Robert's wearing his face mask because you're in a public environment. Those masks, anytime we're cleaning in public now, we're wearing a mask, right? The company that I do other work for, Integrity Maintenance Services, where I run a training program, they clean a lot of grocery stores. And in cleaning those grocery stores, even though there's only a small amount of people working in the store at night, they still are required. Any vendor, anybody coming into the store to do any work has to have a mask on. Just a good safe practice. So that really roughly covers the idea of safety of working with chemicals, and obviously the idea of chemical safety. We never mix chemicals, wear safety protection. But now let's talk about what is first outlined at the beginning of this chapter, and that is how we organize our supply closets. Because pretty much every facility that we work with, everywhere where we are in the cleaning business, we're going to store our chemicals in a supply closet of some sort. So it's important that we understand how important it is to keep everything organized and stored in a way that is safe. Now, for example, harsh chemicals should never be stored up on a high shelf. All chemicals, as Tony brought out a minute ago, should have a label on it. So, important. Never store chemicals together that shouldn't be mixed together. For example, I mentioned the situation of that Buffalo Wild Wings. There should have never been bleach and ammonia stored in the same building or same area. It creates the potential for a hazard. Because what if, not even a case of the employee mixing it, what if those two bottles were to fall off the shelf and mix together? We have an unsafe work situation, right?
Like chlorine and acid.
Chlorine and ammonia.
No, I'm just saying if chlorine and acid mix together, like in a pool business.
They can, yep.
Yeah, I've seen it done.
Yeah. So,
You guys say something real quick?
yes,
Hey,
please.
Naomi, you flipped your video around. Your camera is facing forward instead of facing you.
Thanks, Ken.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that in case she didn't want to have anybody see what's going on in the room or whatnot.
So we talk about the supply closets because the supply closets are not only the area where we store our chemicals, but a lot of times there's other things in those areas. It mentions boiler rooms could be used as storage rooms. Water heaters may be in those. So we need to make sure that we are careful with how we store chemicals. I'll give you another scenario. One of my customers was a company called Pride Industries. And Pride Industries is one of the larger janitorial services here in the state of California. They work with those who are disabled a lot to help them to get training and get work. but they also have a lot of government contracts. And one of those contracts was for a healthcare facility, and they were storing their chemicals in what is called a Connex container. You guys know what a Connex container is? Kind of looks like the big trailer that they get out at the shipyards. Okay, those big metal containers, and that's what they'll put on the back of a truck and deliver supplies that people get. Well, nowadays you can buy those containers, shipping containers, right? But they're all metal. In this particular case, they were storing their chemicals in one of those containers. And here in the Central Valley, it gets exceptionally hot. We have a lot of 100-degree days. So you can imagine how hot it gets in one of those Connex containers in the middle of summer. And they were storing lots of chemicals. Can you imagine what that does to a chemical bottle? They were having leaking issues because certain chemicals don't respond well to being heated like that. And the bottles would swell. Chemical bottles are made just out of plastic, and you get that chemical really hot, it can cause damage. So be aware where you're storing your supplies. Usually should be in a cool, dry climate where the boxes aren't going to get wet or get exceptionally hot. You don't want to put them, we don't have to worry about too much freezing conditions here in California, but you wouldn't want to store it in areas where it gets exceptionally cold or freezing temperatures. Another thing to be aware of when it comes to the supply closets and storage is storing of our rags. A dirty supply closet with dirty rags. You can imagine what that could smell like, right? And what kind of reputation does that give you as a cleaner? We talked about that earlier in a professional appearance, but the same is true about our supply closet. If our supply closet is dirty or disorganized, it's a sign to everybody around that we're not the cleanest person in the cleaning business. It doesn't represent us well. As well, it makes our job more difficult. You're searching for this product. So have everything nice and organized where you know where it's supposed to be. All your chemicals are organized together so it's easy to use. Your SDS is in a spot where you have a binder so somebody can access it. It should be easily accessed. Here's some basic principles when it comes to our janitorial supply closet. One is making sure that we have everything in a convenient location. Okay. I like to make sure that I can get in and out of the supply closet easily. So I don't want to put anything in my way that's going to be blocking a door or make it hard to open up a supply closet. A lot of times we work with what is called cleaning carts. And in our next lesson, we'll talk about our cleaning carts. We don't want to have those in there in such a way that it makes it hard to get in and out. And then I mentioned about being organized. Mark, you're muted.
Yeah, your SDS, is that normally kept around where the chemicals are, or where do you guys normally put those in the industry?
So in the industry, there's two places that I always recommend it to a facility. One, in the front office, it is required in the office to have a bloodborne pathogen standard or directions, and also the SDS. So that one is the required place. But I always recommend that wherever your chemicals are being stored, you have an SDS binder. In a school environment, that might mean multiple binders. And to that extent, anybody besides Nelson, Christina, do you also work with Elk Grove School District?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
But
Christina,
I work in the maintenance department.
okay, so you're not familiar with chemicals. Elk Grove School District eliminated a lot of cleaning chemicals over the last 3 years to reduce the amount of chemicals for safety standpoint, but also it reduces the amount of SDS that they have out there. What they've gone to is a chemical system that is chemical free. It uses a type of water that is a treated water for cleaning, which we will discuss. So, okay, good question mark though, as far as where those should be stored. All right, before we move on further, I want to also address some terminology. As we move forward through the rest of our classes, every lesson after this one is going to use 3 different terms that will be used consistently, and we need to understand what they mean. One is tools and equipment. Tools and equipment refers to any item that is used over and over again for a long time. For example, a vacuum cleaner is a piece of equipment, right? A mop bucket is a tool that we would use. We use those every day. So those are tools and equipment. Materials are items that are not considered tools or equipment. They last through many uses, but they will have to be replaced, like rags, microfibers, or dusting cloths. Okay, those are different materials that we use. And then the term supplies. Supplies are things that we have to replace regularly. We think of chemicals, paper supplies like paper towels and toilet paper, hand soap, garbage can liners. Those are all the supplies we use. The reason I bring this up is here in this lesson, we're talking about the chemicals, which are part of the supplies. As we move forward through the rest of our lessons, every lesson, I will always ask you to identify what are the equipment and tools, what are the materials used, and what are the supplies. As part of your final project, you will have to be able to identify for a facility not only the procedures of how you clean it, but what equipment and tools are you using, what materials, and what supplies will you use. I'm going to ask you as part of a final project to think outside the box and identify green cleaning practices, okay, and what kind of green chemistry or green tools that you might use in a facility. And then also, in some cases, what traditional additional products might you need. Nelson, you had a comment. You're muted. Okay. Okay, let me address green cleaning now. Yeah, if you guys turn to page 11 of your book, I'd like to get somebody to read that section on green cleaning. It's the blue section. It's about 3 paragraphs long. Who can volunteer for me on that one?
I'll do it.
Ken? All right.
Yeah. All right. Green cleaning organizations try to minimize the number of different cleaning chemicals used to get the job done correctly. It is best to standardize cleaning products by color, number, and type for ease of training and increased safety. For instance, having different neutral cleaners in each custodial closet can lead to overuse or underuse of the chemical and unclean and unhealthy surfaces. Some states and other types of governmental organizations have passed laws or internal policies that all chemicals used in the cleaning process must be certified green by an organization like Green Seal or EPA. Many of these organizations have lists of approved products, and the use of any non-approved product is prohibited. Your vendor can assist in identifying the correct products to use. Make sure you use only products provided by your organization and that you use them according to the manufacturer's instructions. Do not bring in products from home or from a store that does not have the SDS. Never use products that you have not been trained on the correct safe use.
Ken, thank you for that. So a lot of information there, and I'll give you an example of an organization or a building in Sacramento that follows that strictly. Downtown Sacramento is the Cal EPA building. It is over by Cesar Chavez Park. There's a lot of state buildings there. You have the federal offices and state offices. They require that all chemicals used there are green. It has to either be Green Seal certified or EPA green registered, but it has to have that registration. Give me a second, guys. Sorry, somebody had to ask a question from my family real quick. So that's one of the things, is that it has a green certification. But the other part of it is reducing the amount of chemicals, because part of being green is environmentally friendly, using less chemicals. I mentioned that a lot of stuff has gotten safer and safer. Several of you mentioned the method products, which are popular. Like I said, I think Target sells Method brand. Okay. And so because of that, those products are designed to have less harmful chemical ingredients. So green has to do with using a safer product, less harmful ingredients, but also less chemicals. So when we move forward and we start talking about green chemicals, I want you to identify some of those green chemicals that we might use. What are the difference between a standard and a green chemical? And then some just safe practices. Never bring something from home. And I will tell you, it is just a general policy that most companies do not want you bringing outside chemicals in. This goes to what Tony stated earlier. That OSHA fine, if you bring Lysol from home and that hasn't gone through and the company doesn't have an SDS and it maybe has a label on it, but it's not part of the approved products, they can get in trouble for that. There could be a fine for not having an SDS in it. And something to be aware of. We all the chemicals you guys listed at the beginning of our lesson, does anybody have an SDS for any of those products? Do you guys know why you don't have an SDS for those products?
It's commercial? Is that what it is?
So those are consumer related. Okay, we work in the commercial cleaning, and in OSHA only regulates products that are used for business purposes, for our work. It doesn't regulate the stuff that we use in our home or have anything to do with our home. So if you go buy a product in a grocery store, those are what we call consumer use products. And as a result, the government says, look, we don't need an SDS for every product that is used in a person's home. So from that standpoint, they're not going to ask you to have an SDS. Matter of fact, they don't even create them except for the chemicals that they use at the manufacturing plant. But you won't find an SDS if you go to Rayleigh's and say, hey, Rayleigh's, I just bought some Lysol. Can I get the SDS on that? The clerk at the counter is going to be like, what the heck are you talking about? But if you go to a janitorial supply company and buy a chemical, then you can get an SDS. This is where things have gotten tricky. We are now selling commercial cleaning products in Home Depot and in Lowe's. They have gotten away from having to require it because they will sell it in smaller than gallon sized quantities, which allows them to bypass some of those laws. But if it goes into a business, then those people can contact the manufacturer who will supply an SDS. It is up to the business to have the SDS. Okay, it's up to the manufacturer to create one if it's being used for commercial use. So it's a real tricky thing, but frankly, if you're a business or any organization that you have employees, it is required that you have an SDS for every product that you have. And if that product doesn't have an SDS, get it out of the building. So that's why I say don't bring products from home. It's hard to find an SDS for those consumer products.
Question, sir.
Yes, sir.
SDS is a safety data sheet, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. I will tell you there is an old term, and we will talk more about this, what an SDS looks like and so forth. But the old term, for those of us who've been around for a while, used to be called an MSDS, Material Safety Data Sheet. About 7 years ago, the law changed. We updated that, and we now don't use Material Safety Data Sheet. We use a Safety Data Sheet, and we'll explain why later. Okay. Let's move past the closet safety. Let's start talking about the types of soil that we are dealing with, because to understand the chemical that we need to use, we have to understand that we're trying to remove soil with chemicals, right? That's our goal. And in our world of removing soil, as cleaning professionals, there's basically only two types of soils, okay? There is what we would refer to as loose, dry soil or dust. And then there is that oily, sticky soil, greases and oils. Things like that have an animal or vegetable base or even synthetic. Greases are made from oils, right? Sometimes dry soils, when they come in contact with oils, create this compound that is sticky and it has to be removed. A perfect example is when we look at cleaning our kitchen, right? We have something that we need, it's not dry, it's oily and sticky. If we clean our shower, okay, what are we removing when we clean our shower? Soap,
Gunk.
body oils. Yep, you're going to say it, Nelson.
Gunk.
Gunk, yep. So to do that, we need chemicals because it's not loose, dry soil. Interestingly, though, about loose, dry soil, and this is something that will come up in your test, any surface that has not been cleaned in 12 hours will have dust on it. Where does dust come from?
Like our skin cells and various other things that are moving around the environments.
Yep. Our hair, our skin cells, we track it in, right? It can come from all sorts of things. Pet dander. So a lot of it is just in the air. I live down in the Central Valley, further from you guys. I'm down in Riverbank, which is down towards Modesto. We are surrounded by orchards out here, and we have almond orchards. So I think it's like August, September, the dust in the air becomes very thick because they shake the almond trees. And when they do, it's like a cloud of thick dust around. And we have to dust everything. You know, we all dealt with the fires that have occurred here in California. That's particulate in the air, right? And that creates dust. So dust comes from a lot of different surfaces. So it's important to note that any surface that hasn't been dusted in 12 hours is going to have dust on it. Here's other areas where greases or oils come from. Now, we mentioned body contact because of body oils, but also foods, right? We spill foods, we eat foods, we cook. So foods create that, the oily, sticky soils that we talked about. Cosmetics, right? In your bathroom, when you're dealing with women have cosmetics that they use, lotions, those all are going to create oily, sticky soils. I mentioned things like greases or fuels or lubricants in a shop setting or garage, all those different things, they're all going to have that. So these kind of oils, these sticky substances require a chemical to remove them. So that's where we begin to focus. We have to understand that what we're trying to remove is not the same as removing dust. In fact, in cleaning, the first thing we should do is remove the dust first, because it's a lot easier to remove the dry dust than it is the oily sticky. So the better we can trap that the dry soils and remove them, the easier. And an example is when we're cleaning floors. If you're cleaning floors, the first thing you do, you sweep and dust mop the floors. Once you sweep and dust mop the floors, then you can be able to mop the floors. Okay, so these discussion questions that I'm going to highlight, the two types of soils, loose, dry soils, or oily, sticky soils, that's something that would be on a test. So make sure you understand there are those two types of soils. The answers are here, but why is it important to remove loose, dry soil as soon as possible? A little bit of common sense here.
Yeah, so it doesn't get wet and become a oily, wet, you know.
Yeah, mud, right? So absolutely. And Nelson, go ahead.
When I was doing my my classroom and someone will have towels, or when I do the office, what I do, I have my upright vacuum, my backpack vacuum on me, and I just vacuum the carpet and also the towels, because even you dust mop or sweep, you're still gonna leave small particle that you can't see with an eye, you know.
Yeah. There are times where you can't use a backpack vacuum, but if you can, it's a fantastic way to go about it. Large, huge areas, it's not real convenient to do, you know, a large area like a grocery store or a retail store. But when you're dealing with a classroom, best tool in the world is a backpack vacuum. Now, I didn't touch on this, but I want to address this one because it refers to the two elements from the chemical compound that make greases and oils feel slick, okay? And that is hydrogen and carbon, okay, which we refer to as hydrocarbons. That's important to note because later we're going to talk about how to break down hydrocarbons. And hydrogen itself is an element in the periodic table, okay? And hydrogen, when we start to talk about pH, it is the power of hydrogen. So that's going to become an important element because who knows the chemical term for water?
It's a 7?
No, it's
Oh, H2O, right?
H2O. You got it, Ken. 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen, H2O, right? So hydrogen is an important building block to a lot of chemicals, a lot of things we work with. Hydrogen peroxide is H2O2. It has an extra oxygen molecule. It's very similar to water. So from that standpoint, when we start to look at the power of hydrogen, it's how that hydrogen atom works in connection with something else. Okay, and we're going to break down how we remove these hydrocarbons with chemicals. So it gets a little tricky. I don't want to make it overly complicated. That particular issue will not come up on your test. So I'll bring that up. All right. So here's what I'm going to give you guys as an assignment coming up. We're going to have you, I want everybody to read the section and this is some lengthy reading, but it's important. The section on cleaning agents, starting on page 12 and going through page 15. That's going to be part of your reading assignment for your class on Friday, because we are going to break down each of those different ones. Now, let me see here. I have something in the classroom that I wanted to share with you guys as well, so hang on. Okay. I have put a couple fun videos in here that I'm going to share with you guys today. And it's just going to explain a little bit about how chemicals work. So I hope you guys enjoy these. These are sitting in your Google Classroom. So if you have seen them already, zone out. But you, if you haven't, I want to share them with you. So give me a second, and I'm going to share again.
Hey, Dave, was that page 12 to
Pretty
15?
funny.
Yes. Yep. Now this guy is a little bit goofy, but I hope you enjoy his little speech on how do cleaning products work, and then we'll see the second one. It should be loading right now.
What's up, my friends? Thomas Hernandez back at you with another Clean with Confidence video. This is going to be video number 1 in a new series I'm calling Understanding Cleaning Chemicals. For those of you who love details and like to know how stuff works and maybe a little bit of chemistry, you're going to love this video. But for some of you, the stuff that I talk about in this video, it's going to sound like blah, 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 blah. So let's find out what kind of person you are. So what is cleaning? Cleaning is the removal of unwanted soil, like oil and grease, from a surface like shirts, floors, mirrors, counters, you name it, etc. It's a very rewarding process, and it's awesome. To effectively clean, you need 2 things. You need water, and you need a chemical called a surfactant. Surfactants transform ordinary water into a magic potion, basically. However, in order to understand how this works, we need to go over a little bit of chemistry first. The first thing you need to understand is how water reacts on a surface. Water has what's called a high surface tension. It's made up of 2 hydrogen atoms, so H2, and 1 oxygen atom, O, H2O. And because of this chemical makeup, water molecules tend to stick together through a process called hydrogen bonding. In English, it basically means that when you put water on a surface, that water likes to bead up, into little droplets, and it prevents it from spreading out on the surface. So if it's not going to spread out, it can't penetrate the soil, it can't clean. It's almost like the water.
It glitched on me.
Like the water is being repelled by the surface, which means it has a high surface tension. I'm going to do a demonstration of that here in a moment. But they call that high surface tension, and as a result, water is a horrible cleaner by itself. So enter the surfactants. When you add a surfactant to water, it changes those chemical properties and it interferes with those water molecules bonding together. It's kind of like when you and your girl were trying to hang out and her little brother kept coming in and interfering. Yeah, like that. Here's a visual representation on a piece of paper for you. Plain water beads up. Water plus the surfactant, as you can see, we've got our surface right here. The water, hydrogen bonding is going on. The water sticking together. Water plus the surfactant, it's spreading out. It's able to spread out and penetrate that surface, penetrate that soil. High surface tension, low surface tension. I want you to watch the reaction of the water when this water hits this plate, okay? See how that water beads up? Look at that. Now I got a second plate. Watch what happens when I spray it with that water plus surfactant. There it goes. You can see the cleaner really spreading out. Let's take a look. Water's on the right. Water plus surfactant on the left. So now let's get into the good part and talk about how this process actually works. This is a surfactant on a microscopic level. It has two ends, this end right here and this end. This end right here is a cluster of atoms, and it carries an electrical charge. There's different types of surfactants. Some are positively charged, some are negatively charged, some carry a little bit less negative charge than others, but regardless of their charge, they all work the exact same way. This end that has the charge, it's hydrophilic, basically means it loves water. It loves to be surrounded by water. This end right here, this chain right here, is hydrophobic, and it hates water. Water makes it madder than an alcoholic little person when the whiskey's on the top shelf. No pun intended to little people. The end right here is a chain of carbon and hydrogen atoms, and it carries no charge. This end is repelled by water, and it will seek out and attach itself to anything that isn't water, specifically oil and grease, for instance. This is surfactants in action. The surfactants, the cleaning solution, is sprayed down onto our surface. It's got our soil here, and as you can see, they attach themselves. This end, hydrophobic end that hates water, attaches itself to the soil, penetrates it, attaches itself, and as you can see, it's got a grip on that soil. Now, as you can see, once these molecules have attached themselves to the soil, the electrical part starts to do its job and take effect, and they start to really pull that soil up off that surface. Once the soil has been completely pulled from the surface, as you can see, it just kind of floats up there above the surface. The leftover surfactants down here it repels that soil from being redeposited back onto your clean surface. And eventually what happens is that these surfactants here just continue to pull apart the soil into little bitty pieces and eventually emulsify that soil into the cleaning solution. I want you to think about a dirty floor. Pretend you had a very, very dirty floor and you put your cleaning solution on the floor and then you started to scrub it with a deck brush. The solution would become very, very dirty because the soil would be lifted from the floor, right? And then these surfactants would, because of their similar charge, magnetism, rips that dirt soil apart and just emulsifies it and dissolves it into that liquid, making that liquid very dirty, if that makes sense. Hope this makes sense. So that is how cleaning products work, my friends. You can find surfactants in just about everything, from hand soaps, dish soap, laundry detergents, cleaning products, toothpaste. It's a jungle out there. So that's it, my friends. If you like this video, give it a big Clean with Confidence thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel for more great content. And until we meet again,
all right. Interesting video, but I wanted you to see that before you actually started to read the section on the soil removal process and understand the chemicals, because sometimes having where you have somebody diagram it for you and then you again read it starts to make a little bit more sense. The second video in there, what's in the bottle, I'm going to leave that one for you guys to be able to view on your own. Okay. And then in addition, I'll be posting more videos today into this. One of the fun videos we will watch is about how surface tension works. So that'll be discussed on Friday's class, and we'll break into those chemicals. During this session, I will tell you, on the chemical session, I typically want to cut these a little shorter, because if not, we cover too much information in one day and it gets a lot of detail, especially in the session like we're going to cover on Friday. There's a lot of detail to understanding the chemical process and things such as emulsification, dispersion, adsorption, penetration. So all those are things that we're going to get a little bit more detail on. All right, so we're done a little bit earlier. First of all, we got started on time. I wanted to bring up the practice tests. Did anybody have a chance to go into the classroom, download the practice test, and start to review the information on the first lesson that we just covered? Raise your hand or something so I can. Okay, Mark, you did. Akina, Nelson, Eduardo, okay. So I'm going to share that with you guys. Are you guys seeing my Google Classroom right now, or is it still showing the video? Okay. So here in your Google Classroom, under classwork, you have practice tests. And as I mentioned in the class last week, these questions that are in this test, these are exactly the same questions that will be on your online test. All it does is put them in different order. So if you go through and find the answers to these questions, and there's only 15 of them on the first lesson. So by doing that, you'll be prepared when Therese gives me the information, says, okay, the online testing is now available. And we should be getting that sometime next week, where that'll become available. So I just want to make sure everybody has it. I'm going to encourage you, please do this ahead of time. If you do this, if you go through and go ahead and find the answers to it, make sure you got that right, you're going to have a much higher success. Plus, it opens up the opportunity for you to ask questions of me. So if you run into an obstacle, and this lesson on customer service was pretty easy. The one on chemistry, a lot more difficult. The lesson on chemistry, take a look. It has, let's see, I think it's 33 questions. Yeah, 33 questions. So double the amount of questions in that one. And a lot of them that you really have to pay attention to some details. So my job is to make sure I'm explaining it. Now, here's one other thing I want you guys to do for Friday's class. Everybody, please make sure you have, not Friday, next Wednesday's class. Have a calculator for that class. And I'll remind you again, we need a calculator when we're dealing with the dilution ratios. Okay, we're going to do some whiteboard discussions, so old-fashioned teacher whiteboard. You'll notice I have not posted an assignment on chemistry yet. And the reason I have not done that is I want to wait until Friday to post an assignment for you on the chemistry portion. And then I'll do the same thing next week on Wednesday. I'll post an assignment for that one. All right, so that's what we're going to cover today. Just a couple of additional notes for you. I was telling Mark earlier, I mentioned to those of you who are interested in pursuing janitorial work in the healthcare environment that I would have more information on specifics for the healthcare world. Because most of what we cover in this class is basic janitorial / custodial. There are a few additional details that are not covered in this class about housekeeping. But I met with somebody Friday afternoon from ISSA who provided me some additional content. This lesson that we're covering on chemistry is standard for all industry, or whether we're working in a healthcare environment, school, janitorial service, it doesn't matter. But when we get into the above floor, hard floor, carpet, and restrooms, there's some interesting videos that ISSA has provided me. So as we go through those lessons, at the end of class or around 11 o'clock on a few of those lessons, or 11:30, I will keep the classroom open and I'll post those websites so that you can stick around and watch those. Okay? So, all right, now is the open discussion. Any questions about what we've covered up till now or future things?
Hey, Dave.
Can you hear me?
Yes, who is that, Naomi?
Yeah, I finally got in. I'm on my cell phone now. The
Oh,
other
okay.
thing, you see the phone, my computer is not working, okay? So I don't know
Okay.
what it is, but hey, I got in here. So I've been here since about 10 o'clock. So anyway, yeah, and I just found out how to talk, okay? It has a little thing down here you got to press that says unmute.
Yep.
So anyway, I'm here, and thank you. Yeah, I'm here. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm
Thank you,
okay.
Naomi. Good, good. Anybody else have any questions?
I have one question from test. I want to just make sure if a customer is complaining the best method of communication is the use style. This make it easy for them to understand what they could have done better, true or false. So I think it's true.
Let me see.
Okay, sorry.
Which question is that? So I read
It's
it.
a first question. If
The
a
first
customer
question.
is complaining the best method.
If the customer is complaining, the best method of communication is the you style. This makes it easy for them to understand what they could have done better. Okay, remember we talked about you or I. So
Yeah.
instead of me answering that, let me ask the class. Which is the better method, you or I?
I.
Nelson, why?
Eyes. Eyes.
Because you are taking on, you first you're listening to the customer and you taking on the responsibility to solve the solution, whatever the problem is.
Right. So, Arkina, one of the things that will happen in this testing is they're going to present scenarios that is the wrong scenario. In this case, if a customer is complaining, the best method of communication is the I style. The I style makes it easier for them to understand. So the answer to that question is false. The you style is false.
Thank you. And
You're
I
welcome.
have other is a seven number.
Okay.
Clothing should never cause a safety issue, true or false. I think it's false.
Okay. Should clothing cause a safety issue?
Yes, it can. No,
It
it
can.
shouldn't cause.
It should never cause it. So that the statement is actually true. It should never cause it.
Mm,
And that would be if you're wearing, an example is I'm wearing sleeves. If my sleeves were loose and catches on things, that would cause it. So I shouldn't allow my sleeves to be loose like that, or jewelry, things like that. So that would be a true statement.
True. Okay.
Yep.
And only last one. I'm sorry. The last 11 number question. The last step of good communication is what?
Okay. If you
Is
look,
a C.
okay, yes. And you notice that was on page 5 of your book. In the diagram there,
Yeah.
okay, the last method or last step
Yeah.
is thanking the customer. Good job.
You were saying for the first pre-test, they have 13 questions?
15,
15.
page 5.
That's the page I'm missing.
So
okay.
it's only same question in coming test. Only just sequence is different.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Thank
Yep.
you.
Very good.
Let me print out page 5.
There you go. Good. So, guys, this is a good opportunity for you guys to do this together, you know, where you're helping each other out. Our goal isn't just to answer questions, is to make sure we understand why it's true or false. Why is it that a statement is what it is, or, you know, to understand the why behind those things. That's what makes this class a little bit different, because our goal isn't just to pass a test, it's to understand why we do what we do. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Well, guys, you have your assignment for Friday. please read over that information. It's important, especially as we get into the details. And then we're going to have more videos about the hydrophobic and hydrophilic. We'll have more videos explaining surface tension. Okay, that's a fun one to understand. So just read that information over so that when we look at the video, it all makes sense. Some of the videos we have on Friday are demonstrations to show you a few examples, such as surface tension. Okay. So that's it for today's class. I'm glad to have you guys here and looking forward to Friday's class. We'll see you at 9:30 Friday morning.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys,
Have a
a
nice
good
day. Have a
You
nice
too.
day.
you too.
Have a nice day.
Have a nice day, everyone.